These new additions will literally change the way we mine in Star Citizen, especially if you're a newer player or poor. Mining gadgets were added in Alpha 3.17, and I will be showing you how you can make the most out of it. If you don't know what mining gadgets are, they are items that you attach to rocks to alter their stats, such as instability, resistance, and more. And if you know anything about mining, then you know that Quantanium is the most valuable mineral in Star Citizen, and it's also the most difficult to mine due to its instability. So we'll focus on mining Quantanium with mining gadgets. To start, the default mining head of the Prospector is the Arbor Laser, which is totally inadequate for mining Quantanium, and when you're renting it, you can't modify the ship. That's where mining gadgets come in. Let's take a look at all the mining gadgets available. You'll notice that there's a sort of a trend with these gadgets. These are the ones that reduce instability, and these are the ones that reduce resistance. All the ones that reduce resistance have overcharge penalties. When mining Quantanium, reducing instability is key, and the Sabir specializes in that, and thankfully, it's available everywhere. But you also need to reduce resistance, because Quantanium rocks are highly resistant, so I recommend the Wave Shift or the Boremax. I would not recommend the Stalwart because the 200% overcharge rate will make fracturing a lot dicier, and it's also the most expensive of the three. I recommend buying a couple Sabirs. At least 3, but in this case I bought 4, because once the rock fractures, there will be a couple fragments worth fracturing, and you want to have extra Sabirs on hand to attach to those fragments. I also recommend buying a couple wave shifts at least. You'll need at least 1 wave shift for the initial fracture. Not only does it reduce resistance, but also mostly offsets the green window penalty from the Sabir. Now you'll need some extra wave shifts for 100% Quantanium fragments, and I'll show you why in a sec. Before you head out, I recommend you buy a backpack. This is for storing your mining gadgets so you don't have to go back and forth between your ship. Fun fact, if you want to store your mining gadgets in your backpack, you need at least a medium-sized backpack. Even though a light backpack has the storage capacity to fit a couple gadgets, you can't put it in there for some reason. Now that you have the gadgets, it's time to hop into the Prospector and go mine some Quantanium. I have covered where you can find Quantanium in another video that I'll link in the description that you can watch later. Once you found a good Quantanium rock, park your ship close to the rock and take out the Sabir and Wave Shift. Equip one of them on your backpack and have the other one on hand so you don't have to go back and forth. Once you're right up to the rock, hold left click and an outline of the gadget will show up. You want to place it such that you'll have a clear view of the gadget screen. Once you've attached the gadget to the rock, wait a couple moments for it to calibrate. A screen will pop up with a waveform for you to match. Use these sliders to match to the target waveform. Once you have at least 90% match, you can activate it. There's no additional benefit for going for a perfect 100%. Now there's no official description on how these sliders work, but after mining dozens of rocks with these things, I have a rough idea on how it works. I believe propagation and axial scatter affects the height of the waveform, and field range affects the width and translation, but the changes aren't uniform when moving each slider, so there's still gonna be a lot of tinkering involved. But I do have a pro tip. If you get stuck on a waveform and you just can't get it to 90%, you can detach the gadget and reattach it to get a completely new waveform for you to match. I recommend placing the gadgets close to each other to make it easier to keep track of after fracturing. Once you've attached the gadgets, head back to your ship and start fracturing. You'll know the gadgets are working when you see the updated values on the right hand side of your screen. As you can see, it is now significantly easier to fracture this rock, but still challenging to get the charge level within the green zone. There is a bug where sometimes your mining laser will turn off for no reason. This is probably because of the reduced charge rate from gadgets such as the Sabir. Once the rock is fractured, before you leave your ship, check which fragments are worth fracturing. That way, when you leave your ship, you can go attach your gadgets to those rocks while out retrieving your gadgets. If you want to save money, it's important to not overcharge as the rock fractures, because there's a higher chance that you'll lose your gadget if there is overcharge. From my experience, whenever I put 2 gadgets on one rock, one of them always ends up lost, even though I didn't overcharge the rock. Surprisingly, you can retrieve broken gadgets after mining. You can tell they're broken by the sparks. You can even turn it on and attach them to other rocks, but you can't activate it, so they're essentially useless. You can tell a gadget can be reused by their blinking red lights, which is more visible on the ground than it is in space. One tip to make it easier to find your gadgets is to position your mining laser such that the gadgets are beside your charge level, so you don't have to take your eyes off the charge window to find your gadgets. Earlier, I said you need wave shifts for 100% Quantanium fragments, and here's why. Pure Quantanium fragments are so resistant that an Arbor Laser can't even scratch it. That was a valuable lesson because I brought and lost my only wave shift, and I thought that it was small enough that I could fracture it regardless. For fragments that aren't pure Quantanium, as long as the resistance is below 0.9 or 0.85, the minimum you need is a Sabir. But another wave shift will make fracturing a lot easier because the margins are so tiny and the optimal charge rate is so slow. But with enough patience, you'll crack the fragments and you'll be able to harvest the rocks. But before you do, retrieve your gadgets first, because harvested Quantanium has a timer that will explode and you don't want to lose that precious cargo. If you're mining on a moon or planet, you'll need another gadget to reduce resistance, such as a Boremax or another wave shift for 6, 7, and 8k mass rocks. Make sure you land on a relatively flat level surface and there's no strong winds so you can easily go back into your ship. You can also use mining gadgets on rock mineable deposits. But why would you? It's absolutely pointless. Mining gadgets are really useful for rental prospectors, but outside of that, it's not really necessary. After all, you're wasting time leaving your ship, attaching the gadgets to the rock, calibrating it, and then getting back into your ship. Time that could have been spent on actually mining. The only scenario I could see where a mining gadget could come in handy is if you find a very heavy rock and the modules you use to crack it are all used up or you forgot to equip them. In that case, a gadget like the Boremax would come in as a useful backup. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. And while you're here, hit that like button and subscribe. And ring that bell if you found this video helpful. Now to mine Quantanium, you need to be able to find Quantanium. And luckily, I have a trick that will help you easily find Quantanium, which you can watch right here.